cheating wife screamed when I knocked on the window because she didn't expect to see my face with a camera when she was with her affair partner in my bedroom. I guess I'll go ahead and just start with a story of my marriage experience that lasted a year 2020 to 2021. I apologize in advance if anything is lacking coherency or if anything seems a bit ambiguous. 2020 was a hard year for many, and I just somehow managed to fall into yet an extra pitfall of 2020, my very quick marriage to the person I trusted the most. January 1st, 2020, I got a text from my old acquaintance from freshman year in college, home I haven't seen in years. "Hey, I miss you." And if I could change one thing about 2020, it would be my entertainment of her texts and leading her into my wife that I worked so hard to build. I kind of had a crush on her in college, but I never really saw us getting into anything serious. She has been in a lot of unsuccessful relationships and seems to be the person you think really doesn't want anything serious to do with anybody. I know, big mistake. I have been working full-time for 2 years after university, and I was raised on premises such as structure, hard work for reward, emotions, seriousness, commitment, etc. I do, however, have my flaws too, since no one's perfect. Anyways, back to the story. Over the next couple months, we would text non-stop, and she would come over for about every other weekend, taking a 4-hour drive just to be with me. We were so happy. And she was really pushing me into proposing and getting married as soon as possible. When that didn't yield anything, in the beginning she brought the idea of a promise ring. And I think her persistence and me not experiencing such deep emotions ever before and falling in love led us to May 1st, 2020. When I proposed, and we went the following day to court to get married. We were so happy, and she swore to change her bad habits, which I thought I got down pretty good, come later to find out there's a whole other level to these. An example of the bad habits with smoking, which she convinced me at the time that she quit. We get on a rental lease around the same time and move into a house in the same city I lived in. We were so happy and excited that we're out here building the wife that we want. And we seem to agree on the big things like kids and families and stuff like that. After only about a month of living together before my ends, I was laying on the bed working from home one day when I noticed her phone right next to me light up with Snapchat and Twitter notifications. Now, I had previously learned her passcode as she told it to me once, and it's so easy that I never forgot. I entered it and peeked at the notifications. And I was shocked at what I saw. My whole body started shaking as we're still cuddled up and she's asleep. And here I am finding out that what she told me she does for a living was a complete lie in the crap. I saw the posts on Twitter and Snapchat and X sites and online X sites and figured it all out pretty quick. My wife that I just married has been streaming online for the past 3 years or so. I wasn't sure how to react as my body froze in bed. My shaking body eventually triggered her to wake up, and as soon as she did, she noticed how pale my face was in lack of eye contact and asked, "What's wrong?" I said, "Nothing." Again. "What's wrong, babe? Are you okay?" I asked, "What do you do for a living?" as I slowly turned her phone towards her with a very detailed post of hers advertising her body on Twitter. And her reply was shocking and absolutely ridiculous. "How do you think I made all that money very fast and staying up all night?" Yep. She's very quick to lay her problems and lying on others very rapidly. I know some people are okay with streaming online and whatever. I just want to mention that it was very clear that this is something that will break our relationship forever. The following moments were moments of her crying on bed and trying to hug and kiss me and tell me she's sorry and won't ever do it again. And she would quit and do anything for me and to make me happy, and that it's a soul-destroying job and so on. Yep. My Doma didn't see anything short of forgiving her, and we carried on with working on building our marriage. And like they say, when trust's broken, everything is pretty much broken. I would start the habit of checking her phone every now and then. And I caught her secretly streaming online and sexting clients and friends with benefits like her psychiatrist, for example. And off we go. Don't lie again. Forgiving again. I don't recall how many times I forgave her for lying and not sticking to such an important promise to me in such a sensitive moment. But it must have been 2 to 3 times after May. Eventually we started seeing a marriage counselor for a few months, and unsurprisingly it was mostly assignments for her to work on her issues of how she needs to feel desired, loved by men, etc. And let me just say that we had the greatest sex wife and greatest emotional journey together during the good moments. Of course. Our marriage seemed to be showing good signs of repair over the next few times going to the therapist. But eventually all hell broke loose. I lost it. December 1st, she starts texting her psychiatrist again and exchanging explicit photos and vacation plans for prescriptions and cash. I did forget to mention that I have a very long history of all these conversations in the form of text screenshots. I remember that day I couldn't sleep but pretended to. We were in the same bed, and when the sun came out, I couldn't hold in the feelings of hurt any longer. I went to my computer while she was still asleep and printed the divorce forms, filled them out rather fairly considering what she's done, and woke her up with a simple "I need you to sign this." She was so confused. So I had to elaborate and tell her these are divorce papers. You don't deserve someone like me. I had enough lies. I can't trust you again. Even if I wanted to save us both the head and heartaches and sign this, she starts crying and goes into a breakdown. I got no signature that day. Unfortunately, her mom drove down worried after what happened, and I didn't exactly tell her what's been going on, but kept it as a simple "our trust is broken, and I can't trust her anymore. This is for the better." After a week of back and forth talk between us, she finally agreed to sign it, wanting us to stay friends. Remember my Dumay? Yes. I said yes. Let's stay friends and open to her anther smaller part of my heart as a friend who cares about her still and provides some of her needs since her streaming online income was no longer present. One of our main agreements as friends who will live together for the remainder of the lease was to not have anybody over, guys in her case and women in my case. We had our separate bedrooms and tried to focus on our lives. It only took 2 weeks, December 16th. And I wake up randomly at 1 a.m. and I see a text from her saying she has a friend over. I text her, my disappointed since it's clearly a guy in there, and I felt so disrespected. No answer. I get my phone and go into the backyard and get a good video of what's going in the bedroom. Had I waited 10 more seconds, they would have been all in each other deep. I knocked on the glass creepily as I'm filming her absolute lies and deceptiveness, and the guy starts to leave. This was probably the first time I yell at her throughout the entire year of marriage and call her garbage and disgusting and so on. We come to a resolution after the fighting that she would take over the lease till it ends in May 2021 and would be responsible for the entire rent amount. I started apartment searching and ended up a move in just this week. January 9th, 2021. Keep in mind 2 things. The first is that in order to take my name off the lease, I had to pay the remaining half of the rent for the next month, and we agreed she would pay me those back on a payment plan since she doesn't really have a steady job and she went back to streaming online now. That agreement was handed yesterday to her and is yet to be signed. The second thing is I have all my property of the house that we lived in except for my washer and dryer that I agreed to leave with her as a little help till the end of January 2021, trying to decide if I should stick to that agreement now since she almost make a fuss out of everything and will let go of anything easy. Anyways, that same night I finalized my move out 10 minutes later, and with a 20-minute notice she brings another guy over to move some furniture around, a guy she met on Bumble whom she keeps stressing how successful and rich he is. I find myself spending the night in a motel nearby my new place since the electricity is out. I don't want to reach out to her since I feel like just cutting her off completely from my wife 100%. I started watching cheating wise videos on YouTube, and the Reddit storytelling once brought me here to share my story with you about my infertile ex-wife. My ex-wife deceived me and manipulated me. I was the dumb nice guy who worked overtime trying to find stability on our shaky grounds, and yet I don't get support from her. Instead, all I get is hurt and disrespect, even on good terms. I'm glad we had no wedding, and I feel sorry any single soul she decides to manipulate in the future. Yes, she's very good at it and I'm a dummy, but overall I'm glad it only took me less than a year to find out who she really is and what she really wants to change about herself. No kids, all financial support except for some furniture she got was for my income and hardware, and I can let go of this person forever now, even if she comes back on her knees with another "Hey, I miss you." Learned a lot. If you made this far, you're all awesome and great listeners to a not so great writer. I hope I get better at it and provide more updates with time. But for me, all I wanted was to vent and air out some steam, because for her it's so easy to find a guy and sleep with, but for me I'm still in shock and questioning who the heck did I marry. Lol. Found out wife had been cheating for a long time and only stayed with me for my financial support. We met at a coffee shop while she was working as a barista. I am 11 years older than her. She is 35 and I am 46. We have been together for 5 years. We have 1 child together. And she has 3 kids from the previous relationship, which I have adopted as my own. I have never been married before. And I don't have any kids before her. She, on the other hand, had 3 kids from the previous relationship and work at a minimum wage job. I, on the other hand, run a successful business and make a comfortable living for myself. At the beginning of the relationship, when I met her, she was my dream girl. She all but worshipped me in return. I looked past the fact that she was a single mom with an absentee baby daddy. I took on the responsibility. I thought the romance would last forever. Maybe I was naive. But such are the initial phase of relationships. Over the years we lost sight of each other. Work became stressful for me and we became neglectful of each other. My personality changed. I became a lot angrier than I used to be, gained a lot of weight. My wife wanted me to change, but over time she became increasingly more distant and withdrawn. 5 months ago, it was obvious that she was slipping away from me. So I did my very best to change my attitude and schedule to revamp our relationship, including taking off from work and spending more time with her. As the head of household, I feel it is my duty and obligation to identify when my family is heading to crisis and do whatever it takes to steer things back on track. I am committed to serious and significant positive personal changes. I recommitted to a lifestyle of healthy thinking, healthy living and healthy loving. I lost 40 pounds. Even better than that, I had finally conquered a lifelong demon. I vanquished my temper. I found a common, clear inner platform to operate from and was highly motivated. These changes made an immediate impact on my children, but bafflingly did nothing for my wife, who begged to see these types of improvements for years. In fact, she seemed offended at these improvements and openly expressed her skepticism and doubt my sincerity. Undaunted, I feel she needs more time to be convinced. And indeed, we are communicating and enjoying our friendship better than we have in ages. I thought maybe I can pull this out of the tailspin. After all, I felt like she had already checked out of the marriage, but I continued to make effort to rekindle our romance. But she's still assuming the worst of me. But I am no longer that man who reacts. I am now a man who responds. And I chose to continue giving the best of myself to my wife and her children, my stepkids, for however long they stay under our roof. I never really had a strong urge to snoop. But I admit I couldn't understand why my wife wasn't appreciating the change of culture in our household. How could she not see what was happening? Was she distracted? So I logged into her email. I know the password. I always have never felt truly compelled to breach her privacy because she had legitimately earned my trust over the years. To my shock, there are no words to describe it reading those emails. It was probably the single most painful experience of my life. Not only was I hurt by the betrayal, but the way she easily cheapened herself sexually for this man was indescribable. For me, this thing had been going on for 4 months and got physical in the past couple of weeks. A former coworker who checked in to say hi becomes an emotional affair and then physical. I also found out on the email that she told him that she would have divorced me but doesn't have the finances to move out anytime soon. And she needs somebody to take care of her 3 kids because she couldn't do it herself. Yesterday was our 5th wedding anniversary. I have been in a mindset of willing my wife back and having happy plans. Instead, I found out that she was having an affair and she's only with me because she wanted someone to help her raise her kids. Again, just no words to describe that feelings. When she gets home that night, she is in full-on fight/flight mode. I approach her from my recently developed calm and clear platform. Passing the ultimate test, I remain centered and grounded throughout. My response in my darkest hour finally convinced my wife that my evolution was authentic. And she broke down in tears, apologizing all night long and promising to break it off with the affair partner, that all she wanted was attention and things had just gotten out of hand. She said the talk about divorcing was only a fantasy and we have been distant lately. The next morning, I told her that my effort to commit myself to the marriage had been in vain and that I don't know whether I can get past the affair. But she promised to reinvest her energy into our family and do what it takes, that I should forgive her and that I am partly to blame for pushing her away. It's only been 48 hours. I don't know what's going to happen or how much more I have to give, though I feel compelled to explore. Long weekend coming up. Wife and I will have a lot to talk about. Update. While I on my share of creating an unhappy marriage, her crossing the line is of her own doing. I take zero ownership of that. I have a serious caged fury about her decisions right about now. My wellness path remains intact. I get a lot of satisfaction from it and can't imagine abandoning it now. I don't have much appetite, but I am otherwise okay. I just happen to have an individual counseling session scheduled that very day after D-Day. So that would help me vent and get some tips on how to keep my mind right. I have told my best male friend who I worry was a good idea or not. And I told my mother. I also don't know how to contact the other betrayed spouse, otherwise I likely would. My wife told me that she told the affair partner that the affair had been discovered when she was on her drive home and claimed he ended it right there and ran for the hills. Over the course of our conversation that night, she came to realize that she may have been exploited by an opportunist who cut and run as soon as it started getting dramatic. She was distraught with herself, cried bucket loads, feeling duped and ashamed. Apologized numerous times, promised she was done with it. Yet the next morning she confessed that had I not discovered the affair and the way I responded to it, she very well would have continued. Now I find myself glued to the online phone text usage info. I hate feeling this way. But I see he was texting her all yesterday morning after she left for work. When she returned that last night, I told her I knew she was communicating with him and asked if she met up with him. Which she said he was groveling and asking to talk with her. So she met up with him allegedly to reiterate that she felt he used her and she was done with the affair. I have zero evidence that this interaction occurred as advertised. However, there is also no evidence of phone text communication with the affair partner since the approximate time she said this combo happened. They may be using another form of communication. I don't know, I can't spin out about that. I confronted that the only reason she was trying to reconcile is that her affair partner dumped her, that her eyes are now open to the fact that she was being used. She said that the affair had little to do with her desire to divorce the old version of me. But now she has seen beyond a shadow of a doubt that I can handle adversity like a boss, and she is completely bewildered and has softened her stance and is willing to talk. Yet she is also embarrassed about the affair to the point she feels that it may just be too much for us to overcome. Maybe she is right. I don't know, we got lots to talk about. Well, no dead, merely relaying what she said, which I have no choice but to take with a hearty grain of salt. We have a 3-day weekend coming up where we'll spend a lot of time discussing things if we decide to attempt reconciliation or not. I know full well if I choose not to, then I instantly become one of the most eligible bachelors in my city. That was also part of my growth to prepare for an awesome wife no matter what happens. Update. Again, I am not sure if reconciliation is going to be possible. From my own perspective, I am exhausted and don't know if I can go through all that. I have very little interest in living the wife of a paranoid, betrayed husband, constantly looking for signs of infidelity, hiring private investigator, mucking around with spyware, jumping at shadows, etc. That sounds far too stressful for my tastes. My wife earned my trust the hard way over time and trials, and that trust is obliterated for me. I don't know how realistic it is for me to say I can ever redevelop it. It very well may be easier for me to just wash my hands of it all and move forward in wife. But still, my devotion to the family wife I had not so long ago for innocent children to think about complicates things. I have a lot of thinking to do leading up to our weekend. As far as anger goes, folks, I had a volcanic temper at one point. It was no good for me. Anger clouds the mind. I far prefer the path of the Jedi to the path of the Sith and be consumed by the dark side, as tempting as it may be. Update. I realize she claims that the affair has ended. I have no evidence or reason to believe that. I don't understand why she would play the role of remorseful wayward wife. What is the point? She was already thinking about divorcing me and only staying with me for my financial support. I have seen threads here where the poor betrayed spouse had the affair rubbed in their faces as their wayward spouse danced merrily to divorce. If my wayward spouse was that gung-ho for the affair, why wouldn't she just say suck it? I'm out to upgrade. That would make things a lot easier on both of us than to continue to pretend the affair isn't happening and go deeper to hide it. That just sounds pointless waste of effort. I know her pretty well. At least I thought I did. She does appear genuinely remorseful and distraught about it all. At least in my presence. She is not an Oscar-winning actress. I am not sure how she'd fake those kinds of tears. On the other hand, the way you guys have mentioned that some of her words are rather typical. I'd like to make sure I can see through the tears and sniff out questionable responses. Update. Is she worth keeping around? That's been my number one question rolling around in my mind. The wife she once was for me as recently as this past spring. Hell yes. That version of her is worth keeping around. The person she has become over the summer. I am not sure who she really is anymore. Was this just an isolated thing? Was she involved with him or anyone else in the past? I have no idea what to think at this point. I am a high-value man with a lot to offer. I am fully aware I'll have plenty of opportunities in wife were we to divorce. For kids though? None of them asking for the upheaval and instability that is on their doorstep. I am compelled to exhaust all resources and efforts to keep their world intact. Only then can I look them in the eye and said I did everything I possibly could for them. We won't be deciding on the reconcile or divorce right away. But the fact she had already checked out of the marriage and was thinking about divorcing me means we need to be talking about what we are going to do and come to a decision sooner than later. I don't know how things will unfold yet. But hearing your collective insights will help me be more educated as I head into discussion. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my video, please subscribe and leave like.